In the serene waters of Lake Windermere, aboard the opulent Sapphire Queen, a glamorous cruise turns deadly when a maid is found strangled in a locked cabin. Who among the elegant guests Sir Reginald, the wealthy host, Clara, his enigmatic fiancé, or Tommy, his resentful nephew, holds the key to her murder? As secrets unravel and suspicions rise, only Hercule Poirot, with his brilliant mind and unyielding logic, can navigate the web of lies. Was it jealousy, greed, or a hidden scandal from Clara's past that led to the crime? With a silk scarf, a cigarette case, and a missing letter as clues, every moment drips with suspense. Will Poirot uncover the truth before the killer strikes again? Dive into secrets sink deep. A 15-chapter Agatha Christie-style mystery where no one is what they seem, and every secret could be deadly. Chapter 1. The calm before the storm. Late summer sun cast a golden sheen across the tranquil waters of Lake Windermere, where the grand vessel the Sapphire Queen lay anchored, its polished teak decks gleaming with an almost insolent pride. The yacht, a floating palace of Edwardian opulence, was the pride of its owner, Sir Reginald Haverford, a man whose wealth in shipping had secured him both a baronetcy and a circle of admirers, who were, perhaps, more enamored with his fortune than his person. This weekend, Sir Reginald had invited a select group of guests to join him for a leisurely cruise, a celebration of his recent engagement to the enigmatic Miss Clara Winthrop, a woman whose beauty was matched only by the whispers of her mysterious past. The guest list was a carefully curated ensemble, each member a study in contrasts, their polite smiles barely concealing the undercurrents of ambition, envy, and old grudges. There was Dr. Ernest Caldwell, a Harley Street physician whose impeccable bedside manner masked a penchant for gambling debts. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, a widow of considerable means and even greater opinions, whose sharp tongue had already set the crew on edge. Mr. Gerald Trent, Sir Reginald's solicitor and confidant, whose nervous fidgeting belied his usual composure, and Miss Beatrice Langley, Clara's younger cousin, whose wide-eyed innocence seemed almost too perfect to be genuine. Rounding out the party were Captain Arthur Hastings, recently returned from a stint in the colonies, and young Tommy Haverford, Sir Reginald's nephew, whose sullen demeanor suggested he was less than thrilled by his uncle's forthcoming nuptials. The afternoon was warm, the air heavy with the scent of lake water and blooming heather. The guests gathered on the upper deck, where a long table had been set with crystal flutes and a selection of chilled champagne. Sir Reginald, resplendent in a cream linen suit, stood at the head, his broad chest puffed with pride as he raised a glass. "To new beginnings," he declared, his voice booming with the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. "And to my darling Clara, who has brought light to an old man's heart." Clara, her auburn hair catching the sunlight, offered a demure smile, though her green eyes flickered with something unreadable. The guests murmured their congratulations, but Hastings, seated at the far end of the table, noted the subtle tensions. Mrs. Prescott's pursed lips, Gerald Trent's too quick sip of champagne, and Tommy's outright refusal to raise his glass. It was, Hastings thought, like watching a play where the actors had not yet learned their lines but were already plotting their exits. The Sapphire Queen was a marvel of engineering, its 3 decks housing a dining saloon, a library, and private cabins for each guest. Its crew, led by the stern but efficient Captain Morton, moved with the precision of a military unit, ensuring every comfort was met. Yet, beneath the polished surface, there was an unease, a sense that the yacht was not merely a vessel but a stage, and the drama about to unfold would be far from pleasant. As the afternoon wore on, The conversation turned to lighter matters, tales of London society, the latest Paris fashions, and the merits of the new motor cars. Hastings, ever the observer, found himself drawn to Clara Winthrop. She was charming, certainly, but there was a calculated quality to her charm, as if each smile and gesture had been rehearsed. He wondered what had drawn Sir Reginald to her, a man twice her age, and what secrets she carried behind those guarded eyes. "Captain Hastings," Clara said suddenly, turning to him with a smile that felt like a spotlight. "You've been awfully quiet. Tell me, what brings a man of your experience to this little gathering?" Hastings, caught off guard, cleared his throat. "Oh, merely the chance to enjoy Sir Reginald's hospitality and the beauty of the lakes. I've been abroad too long. I'm afraid England feels like a new country to me now." "And yet," Clara said, her voice soft but probing, "you seem like a man who notices things. I wager you could tell me more about this party than anyone else here." Hastings chuckled, deflecting her scrutiny. "I'm no detective, Miss Winthrop, just a soldier with a knack for staying out of trouble." Her smile widened, but her eyes remained sharp, as if she were measuring him against some private standard. Before he could respond, a sudden clatter from the lower deck interrupted the conversation. A tray of glasses had fallen, shattering across the polished wood. The crew rushed to clean it up, but Mrs. Prescott's voice cut through the commotion. "Really, Sir Reginald, you must speak to your staff. Such clumsiness is intolerable on a vessel of this caliber." Sir Reginald laughed, waving off her complaint. "A minor mishap, Lavinia. Let's not let it spoil the evening." But Hastings noticed something else. Tommy Haverford, who had been slouched in his chair, had gone rigid at the sound of the crash, his hand gripping the armrest until his knuckles whitened. It was a small detail, but Hastings filed it away, sensing that on the Sapphire Queen, even the smallest moments might hold weight. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lake, the guests retired to their cabins to dress for dinner. The yacht was due to sail at 8 o'clock, a gentle cruise under the stars. Hastings lingered on the deck, watching the crew prepare the sails. The air was still, almost too still, and he felt a prickle of unease, as if the lake itself were holding its breath. He could not have known, as he stood there, that within hours, one of the guests would be dead, and the Sapphire Queen would become a floating prison, its secrets sinking deep into the dark waters below. Chapter 2. The silent screamed dining saloon of the Sapphire Queen glowed with the soft flicker of crystal chandeliers, their light reflecting off the polished mahogany paneling and the delicate bone china set before each guest. The table was a vision of elegance, adorned with silver candelabra and a centerpiece of white roses, their petals trembling slightly as the yacht began its gentle glide across Lake Windermere. The guests, now dressed in their evening finery, took their places with the practiced grace of those accustomed to high society, though the air was thick with an unspoken tension that no amount of champagne could dispel. Sir Reginald Haverford presided at the head of the table, his booming laugh filling the room as he recounted a tale of his latest business triumph. Clara Winthrop, seated to his right, wore a gown of emerald silk that accentuated her striking features, her smile as enigmatic as ever. Captain Hastings, positioned between Dr. Ernest Caldwell and Miss Beatrice Langley, found himself studying the group with a soldier's instinct for hidden threats. The crew, under Captain Morton's watchful eye, served the first course of veloute of asparagus while the faint hum of the yacht's engines provided a subtle undertone to the clinking of cutlery. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, resplendent in a beaded gown that spoke of old money, was the first to break the pleasantries. "Sir Reginald," she said, her voice carrying a note of reproach, "I do hope the rest of this voyage will be free of the afternoon's mishaps. A yacht of this stature should run like clockwork." Sir Reginald's smile tightened, but he nodded graciously. "My dear Lavinia, I assure you, Captain Morton has everything under control. Don't you, Captain?" Captain Morton, standing discreetly near the door, gave a curt nod. "Indeed, sir. The crew is well trained, and the Sapphire Queen is in perfect order." Hastings noted the captain's clipped tone, as if the man resented being called to account. In front of the guests, beside him, Dr. Caldwell leaned forward, his voice smooth as he changed the subject. "Speaking of order, Sir Reginald, I must commend you on the vintage of this claret. A Chateau Lafite, is it not? Quite exquisite." The conversation turned to wine, then to the latest London theatre productions. But Hastings's attention was drawn to Tommy Haverford, who sat opposite him, pushing his soup around his bowl with a sullen air. The young man's eyes darted toward Clara Winthrop, then away, his jaw tight. Hastings wondered what grievance lay behind that look. Jealousy, perhaps, or something deeper. The meal progressed to the main course, a perfectly roasted pheasant, when a sudden, piercing scream shattered the decorum. The sound came from the direction of the lower deck, sharp and fleeting, as if cut off abruptly. The guests froze, forks suspended, faces paling in the candlelight. Sir Reginald rose, his napkin falling to the floor. "What the devil was that?" he demanded, his voice losing its jovial edge. Captain Morton was already moving toward the door. "I'll investigate, sir." Likely one of the crew dropped something again. But Hastings, his senses sharpened by years in unpredictable territories, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lake air. He glanced at Clara, whose hands were folded calmly in her lap, though her eyes were fixed on the door with an intensity that belied her composure. Beatrice Langley, by contrast, clutched her napkin, her face as white as the roses on the table. Minutes passed, the silence heavy, until Captain Morton returned, his face grim. "Sir Reginald," he said quietly, "I need you to come with me. There's been an incident." The word incident hung in the air like a guillotine. Sir Reginald frowned, excusing himself with a forced smile. "Carry on, everyone. No need to spoil dinner. I'll be back shortly." But the guests did not carry on. The clatter of cutlery ceased, and whispers filled the void. Dr. Caldwell murmured something about nerves, while Mrs. Prescott declared it utterly scandalous that such disruptions should occur. Tommy Haverford said nothing, but his fingers drummed a restless rhythm on the tablecloth. Gerald Trent, the solicitor, adjusted his spectacles, his hands trembling slightly. Hastings leaned toward Beatrice, keeping his voice low. "Miss Langley, did that scream sound familiar to you? Perhaps someone you know?" Beatrice's eyes widened, and she shook her head quickly. "Oh, no, Captain Hastings. I couldn't say. It was so sudden." Her denial was too swift, Hastings thought, but he pressed no further. Instead, he watched Clara, who had resumed sipping her wine, her movements precise, almost mechanical. He wondered if her calm was genuine or a mask for something else entirely. Sir Reginald did not return for the remainder of the meal. When Captain Morton reappeared, his expression was even graver. He cleared his throat, addressing the table with the air of a man delivering bad news. "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that Miss Clara Winthrop's maid, Ellen Carter, has been found dead in her cabin. It appears unnatural, A gasp rippled through the room. Beatrice let out a small cry, quickly stifled, while Mrs. Prescott's hand flew to her pearls. Dr. Caldwell stood, his medical instincts kicking in. Dead? How? I must examine her at once. Captain Morton held up a hand. The cabin is secured. Doctor, we've sent a wireless message to the authorities, but with the yacht in the middle of the lake, it will be some hours before they can reach us. For now, I ask that everyone remain calm and stay in the saloon. Murder? Mrs. Prescott's voice was shrill. Are you suggesting someone on this yacht is a murderer? We don't know that yet, madam, Captain Morton replied, though his tone lacked conviction. But we must take precautions. Hastings's mind raced. Ellen Carter, Clara's maid, was a quiet woman, barely noticed during the day's events. Why her? And why now? He glanced at Clara, expecting shock or grief, but her face was unreadable. Her eyes fixed on the flickering candles as if they held the answers to some private puzzle. As the guests murmured among themselves, Hastings felt the weight of the closed world they now inhabited. The Sapphire Queen, once a symbol of luxury, was now a floating cage, its passengers bound by suspicion and secrets. Someone among them knew more than they were saying, and Hastings had a feeling that the truth, when it emerged, would be as cold and unforgiving as the waters of Lake Windermere. Chapter 3. The rival of Precision's dining saloon of the Sapphire Queen had transformed from a bastion of elegance into a cauldron of unease. The guests, still seated around the mahogany table, exchanged furtive glances, their earlier civility frayed by the news of Ellen Carter's death. The cloying scent of roses mingled with the faint tang of fear, and the gentle lapping of Lake Windermere against the yacht's hull seemed to mock the tension within. Captain Hastings, his soldiers' instincts on high alert, noted the subtle shifts in demeanor. Mrs. Prescott's rigid posture, Dr. Caldwell's restless fingers, and Tommy Haverford's sullen silence. Clara Winthrop, however, remained an enigma, her composed features betraying no hint of distress over her maid's demise. Captain Morton had just reiterated his request for calm, when a new sound interrupted the murmurs. A sharp, rhythmic tapping from the deck above, like the beat of a cane on polished wood. The door to the saloon swung open, and there, framed in the doorway, stood a figure whose presence seemed to command the very air. Hercule Poirot. He was a small man, impeccably dressed, in a tailored black suit, his patent leather shoes gleaming as if they had never known dust. His mustache, a masterpiece of symmetry, curled with mathematical precision, and his green eyes sparkled with an intelligence that was both disarming and unnerving. Beside him stood a young crewman, clearly flustered, who stammered, "This gentleman insisted on coming aboard, sir. Says he was invited." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the boy with a gesture as delicate as a conductor's. "Merci, young man. I am Hercule Poirot, and I assure you, my presence is no accident." He turned to the guests, his gaze sweeping the room like a searchlight. "Sir Reginald Haverford, I presume, invited me to join this charming voyage, though it seems I arrive at a most inopportune moment." Sir Reginald, who had re-entered the saloon moments before, looked momentarily thrown. "Poirot. Yes, I did mention the cruise to you in London, but I hadn't expected." Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. "The unexpected, Sir Reginald, is often where truth resides. I was delayed by matters in town, but a fortunate motor car brought me to the lakeside just as your wireless message reached the shore. A death, I understand. Most distressing." The guests stirred, their curiosity piqued by this diminutive stranger who spoke with such authority. Mrs. Prescott sniffed audibly. And who, pray, are you to involve yourself in our affairs? Poirot inclined his head, unruffled. I am a detective, madam, one who has made it his life's work to untangle the knots of human deceit. And you are Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, she replied, her tone icy. And I find your intrusion most irregular. Everything about this evening is irregular. Poirot countered smoothly, his accent lending a musical quality to his words. A young woman is dead, and we are all prisoners of this splendid yacht until the authorities arrive. Surely, you would not object to a little clarity. Hastings, who had met Poirot briefly in London through a mutual acquaintance, felt a surge of relief at the detective's arrival. Poirot's reputation for solving the unsolvable preceded him, and Hastings sensed that the Belgian's little grey cells would be sorely needed. He rose, extending a hand. Captain Arthur Hastings. Monsieur Poirot, I'm glad you're here. Poirot's eyes twinkled as he shook Hastings's hand. Mon ami, it is always a pleasure to find a man of action among the thinkers. Now, tell me, what do we know of this tragedy? Captain Morton stepped forward, his military bearing at odds with his evident discomfort. Ellen Carter, Miss Winthrop's maid, was found in her cabin on the lower deck, strangled, it appears, with a silk scarf. No signs of a struggle, but the cabin door was locked from the inside. Locked? Poirot's eyebrows rose, and he clasped his hands behind his back, pacing a few steps. Most interesting. And the time of this discovery? Shortly after 8 this evening, Morton replied. Dinner had just begun when we heard a scream. I found her myself, not 10 minutes later. Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to Clara Winthrop, who sat motionless, her hands folded in her lap. Mademoiselle Winthrop, this Ellen Carter, she was in your employ. What can you tell me of her? Clara's eyes met Poirot's, and for a moment, Hastings thought he saw a flicker of something defiance. Perhaps. Before she answered, Ellen was a loyal servant, Monsieur Poirot. Quiet, efficient. She had been with me for 2 years. I can't imagine why anyone would wish her harm. Yet harm has found her, Poirot said softly. And in my experience, Mademoiselle, no one is harmed without reason, however twisted that reason may be. Dr. Caldwell cleared his throat. If I may, Monsieur Poirot, as a physician, I should examine the body. There may be medical evidence to clarify the cause of death. Poirot nodded approvingly. An excellent suggestion, Doctor. Captain Morton, if you would escort Dr. Caldwell to the cabin, and perhaps Captain Hastings, you would accompany them. Your eyes, I suspect, miss little. Hastings agreed, intrigued by Poirot's confidence. As the trio left the saloon, Poirot turned to the remaining guests. Mesdames et messieurs, I ask that you remain here. The Sapphire Queen is a small world, and within it, someone has committed a grave act. Hercule Poirot will discover who and why. As Hastings followed Morton and Caldwell down the narrow staircase to the lower deck, he couldn't shake the image of Poirot standing in the saloon, his small frame radiating an almost magnetic authority. The detective's arrival had shifted the atmosphere, as if the yacht itself had tilted slightly on its axis. Ellen Carter's cabin was a modest affair, its single porthole offering a view of the dark lake. The body lay on the narrow bed, a silk scarf pale blue, embroidered with tiny flowers tied around her throat. Her face was serene, almost peaceful, but her eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. Dr. Caldwell knelt beside her, his fingers probing gently. Strangulation, no doubt, he murmured. No bruising on her arms or hands, no sign she fought back. Odd, that. And the scarf. It's not hers. To fine for a maid's wages. Hastings frowned, noting the scarf's delicate embroidery. Could it belong to one of the guests? Possibly, Caldwell said, but his tone was cautious. I'd need to see their wardrobes to be sure. Captain Morton, standing by the door, pointed to the lock. It's a simple bolt, but it was slid shut when I found her. No key, no sign of tampering. Hastings's mind raced. A locked cabin, a scream. A scarf that didn't belong. Each detail was a piece of a puzzle, and he had no doubt Poirot was already assembling it in his mind. As they returned to the saloon, Hastings couldn't help but feel that the Belgian detective's arrival was the first ripple in a tide that would soon uncover the secrets sinking deep within the Sapphire Queen. Chapter 4. The interrogations begin. The saloon of the Sapphire Queen was no longer a haven of luxury, but a stage for scrutiny, its chandelier light casting long shadows that seemed to dance with suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood near the head of the table, his small frame commanding attention as he surveyed the assembled guests. His mustache twitched slightly, a sign, Hastings knew, that the detective's little gray cells were already at work. The guests, still reeling from the news of Ellen Carter's murder, sat in uneasy silence, their earlier elegance marred by nervous glances and fidgeting hands. Captain Morton had stationed a crewman at the door, ensuring no one left, while Dr. Caldwell's return from examining the body added a somber weight to the room. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, his voice calm but piercing. Mesdames et messieurs, a crime has been committed, and it is my intention to uncover the truth. Each of you, I understand, was present on this yacht when the unfortunate Mademoiselle Carter met her, and I will speak with you all, one by one, to establish the facts. Order and method, these are the tools of Hercule Poirot. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott bristled, her pearls clicking as she adjusted them. This is outrageous. Are we to be treated as suspects, interrogated like common criminals? Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. Madam, in a murder, everyone is a suspect until they are not. The truth does not discriminate between wealth or status. Now, if you please, I will begin with Mademoiselle Winthrop. Clara Winthrop rose gracefully, her emerald gown catching the light as she followed Poirot to a small alcove at the far end of the saloon, where a table and 2 chairs had been arranged for privacy. Hastings, seated near the main group, watched closely, noting the reactions of the others. Tommy Haverford's scowl deepened, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm on the table. Gerald Trent, the solicitor, polished his spectacles repeatedly, while Beatrice Langley clutched a handkerchief, her eyes darting toward Clara in the alcove. Poirot gestured for Clara to sit, his demeanor courteous but probing. Mademoiselle, you have lost a loyal servant. Tell me of Ellen Carter, her habits, her character, and, perhaps, her enemies. Clara's green eyes met Poirot's, steady and composed. Ellen was diligent, discreet. She came to me 2 years ago, recommended by a friend in London. She kept to herself, rarely spoke of her past. I trusted her completely. And yet, Poirot said, leaning forward slightly, someone did not trust her or feared her. The scarf around her neck, Mademoiselle, it was not hers. I am told. Do you recognize it? Clara hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of her gown. I have many scarves, Monsieur Poirot. It could be mine, though I don't recall lending it to her. Perhaps she borrowed it without asking. Poirot's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. And your movements this evening? Where were you when the scream was heard? At approximately 8 o'clock. I was in the dining saloon, with everyone else, Clara replied smoothly. We were just beginning dinner. I heard the scream, like the others, and then Captain Morton went to investigate. Precisement. Poirot murmured, making a small note in a leather-bound pocketbook. And you noticed nothing unusual before this? No tension between Ellen and another? Clara shook her head, but Poirot caught the briefest flicker of her gaze toward the main table, where Tommy sat. Nothing, monsieur. Ellen was unremarkable in that way. Poirot dismissed her with a nod, then called for Sir Reginald Haverford, the baronet. His earlier joviality replaced by a strained expression, took the seat with a heavy sigh. This is a grim business, Poirot. I can't fathom why anyone would target a maid. Indeed, Sir Reginald, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. But often, the insignificant hold secrets of great significance. Tell me, where were you at 8 o'clock? In the saloon, of course, Sir Reginald said gruffly. I was toasting the guests when that wretched scream interrupted us. And before dinner? Perhaps you visited the lower deck, to check on the crew or other matters. Sir Reginald's face reddened. Are you implying something, man? I was on the upper deck, overseeing the preparations for our sail. Ask Captain Morton if you don't believe me. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. I will ask everyone, Sir Reginald. It is my method. One by one, Poirot questioned the guests. Dr. Caldwell claimed he had been in the saloon, discussing wine with Gerald Trent, who corroborated his alibi but seemed nervous, his hands trembling as he spoke. Mrs. Prescott insisted she had been adjusting her shawl in her cabin until just before dinner, alone a claim no one could verify. Beatrice Langley, tearful and hesitant, said she had been in her cabin, reading, but admitted she had stepped out briefly to fetch a glass of water from the galley, passing the lower deck around 7:45. Tommy Haverford, sullen and evasive, muttered that he had been wandering the deck alone, offering no further details. Hastings, observing from the sidelines, marveled at Poirot's technique. The detective's questions were simple, almost mundane, yet each seemed designed to probe deeper, to catch the smallest inconsistency. When Tommy returned to his seat, Poirot's eyes lingered on him, as if the young man's reticence had piqued his interest. Finally, Poirot addressed Captain Morton. Captain, you found the body. Tell me. The scar fits not. Was it tight? Professionally done? Morton frowned, recalling the scene. Tight? Yes. A simple knot, but firm. Whoever did it meant business? And the door, locked from the inside. Poirot mused. Yet no key was found. Curious. Morton nodded, clearly uneasy. Poirot thanked him and turned to the group, his voice cutting through the tension. Msamis, you have all been most cooperative. But know this, the truth is like a lake calm on the surface, but with depths that hide much. I will plumb those depths. As the guests dispersed to their cabins under Morton's watchful eye, Hastings approached Poirot. What do you make of it, old chap? Everyone claims to have been elsewhere, but someone's lying. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mon ami, they are all lying or, at the least, not telling the whole truth. The scarf, the locked door, the scream, these are not accidents. They are pieces of a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot will arrange them in their proper order. Hastings felt a shiver, not from the cool lake air but from the certainty in Poirot's voice. The Sapphire Queen was a closed world, and somewhere within its polished confines a murderer walked among them. their secrets sinking deeper with every passing hour. Chapter 5. The red herrings. The morning sun rose over Lake Windermere, its rays struggling to pierce the mist that clung to the water like a shroud. The Sapphire Queen remained anchored, its engine silent, as if the yacht itself mourned the violence that had shattered its elegance. The guests, confined to their cabins overnight under Captain Morton's orders, emerged bleary-eyed and tense, their breakfasts served in the dining saloon, under the watchful gaze of the crew. Hercule Poirot, however, was as pristine as ever, his suit immaculate, his mustache a testament to unyielding order. Captain Hastings, seated across from him, marveled at the detective's composure amidst the growing unease. The local police had yet to arrive, delayed by the lake's isolation and a sudden squall that had swept through the night. Poirot, undeterred, had spent the early hours pacing the decks, his eyes scanning every detail: the railings, the portholes, the coiled ropes, as if the yacht itself might whisper its secrets. Now, as the guests picked at their toast and kippers, Poirot addressed them with his characteristic calm. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, standing at the head of the table, "the authorities will join us soon, but until then, Hercule Poirot continues his work. A crime has been committed, and the guilty party sits among us. I urge you to reflect. Any detail, however small, may illuminate the truth." Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, her face pinched with indignation, set down her teacup with a clatter. "This is intolerable, to be confined like prisoners, interrogated by a foreigner. No less, I demand to know what progress you've made, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot's smile was serene, but his eyes were sharp. "Progress, madam, is made in the mind before it is seen in the world. But since you ask, I will share a thought. The scarf that ended Mademoiselle Carter's life, it is a clue most revealing. Who among you owns such a scarf? Pale blue, embroidered with tiny flowers?" A murmur rippled through the room. Clara Winthrop's hand paused mid-air, her teacup hovering, while Beatrice Langley's eyes widened, her fingers twisting her napkin. Gerald Trent, the solicitor, cleared his throat nervously. "Surely, Monsieur Poirot, many ladies own such scarves. They're quite common." "Common?" Poirot's voice was soft, but it carried a sting. "Non, monsieur. This scarf is of fine silk, hand-embroidered, a luxury, not a trinket. And yet, it was found in the cabin of a maid. Most curious." Before anyone could respond, Captain Morton entered, his expression grim. "Monsieur Poirot, we've found something." One of the crew spotted it on the lower deck, near the maid's cabin. He held up a small, silver cigarette case, engraved with the initials Th. Tommy Haverford's head snapped up, his face paling. "That's mine," he said, his voice hoarse. "But I mean, I lost it yesterday, before dinner." "Lost it?" Poirot's eyebrows rose, his tone deceptively mild. "And where, pray, did you lose this case, Monsieur Haverford?" Tommy shifted in his seat, his sullen demeanor giving way to agitation. "I don't know exactly. Somewhere on the deck, I think. I was smoking after lunch, and then it was gone." Double quotes. Mrs. Prescott seized the moment, her voice dripping with accusation. "A cigarette case near the scene of a murder. How convenient. Young man, and you, always skulking about, never saying a word. I wouldn't be surprised if—" "Enough, madam," Poirot interrupted, his voice cutting through her tirade like a blade. "Accusations without evidence are like waves without. Ashore they crash and achieve nothing. Monsieur Haverford, you will permit me to keep this case for now." Tommy nodded mutely, his eyes darting toward Clara, who remained impassive. Hastings, watching closely, noted the exchange, wondering what unspoken history lay between the young man and his uncle's fiancée. Poirot turned his attention to the group, his gaze lingering on each face. This cigarette case is what the English call a red herring. It appears significant, yet it may mean nothing or everything. Let us consider the alibis once more. Mademoiselle Langley, you were near the lower deck at 7:45 fetching water, you said. Did you see Monsieur Haverford? Or perhaps his cigarette case? Beatrice flushed, her voice trembling. No, Monsieur Poirot. I saw no one. The galley was empty, and I returned to my cabin at once. And you, Monsieur Trent? Poirot's eyes fixed on the solicitor, who was polishing his spectacles again. You were in the saloon with Dr. Caldwell, discussing wine. Did you step away at any point before the scream? Trent hesitated, his fingers fumbling. I may have visited the washroom briefly, just before 8, but I was back in the saloon when the scream came. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And, Dr. Caldwell, you confirm this? The physician nodded briskly. Yes. Gerald was with me until he stepped out for a moment. We were all together when the scream was heard. Hastings leaned toward Poirot, whispering, Seems like Tommy's the obvious suspect, with that cigarette case. Too obvious, perhaps. Poirot's lips curved slightly. Mon ami, the obvious is rarely the truth. The cigarette case is a clue, but not the only one. Consider the locked door. How does one strangle a woman in a locked cabin, with no sign of struggle? And the scarf, why leave such a distinctive item behind? As the breakfast concluded, Poirot requested to see the maid's cabin again, accompanied by Hastings and Captain Morton. The small room was as they had left it, the air stale, the body now covered with a sheet. Poirot knelt beside the bed, examining the scarf with a magnifying glass he produced from his pocket. The knot, he murmured, is not the work of an amateur. It is precise, almost professional, and the scarf itself, note the faint scent of perfume, not the sort a maid would afford. Hastings sniffed the air, catching a trace of jasmine. Clara's perfume, perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. But we must not leap to conclusions. The mind, Hastings, must be like a mirror, clear, reflecting only what is shown. As they left the cabin, Poirot paused by the porthole, his gaze fixed on the misty lake. The red herrings multiply, mon ami. The cigarette case, the alibis, the scarf all point in different directions. But Hercule Poirot sees through the fog. The truth is there, waiting to be uncovered. Hastings felt a chill, not from the lake air but from the certainty that Poirot was closing in on the killer. Even as the web of lies grew thicker aboard the Sapphire Queen. Chapter 6. A clue in detailed mist over Lake Windermere had thickened by mid-morning, cloaking the Sapphire Queen in a ghostly veil that seemed to mirror the opacity of the truth. The guests, confined to the yacht's upper decks, moved with the restless unease of caged animals, their conversations stilted and their glances laden with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, remained a beacon of calm, his polished shoes clicking softly as he paced the saloon, his eyes darting to every detail: the angle of a chair, the placement of a teacup, the faint creak of the floorboards. Captain Hastings, trailing behind, felt the weight of the investigation pressing harder with each passing hour. The locked cabin and the silk scarf forming a puzzle that seemed to defy logic. Poirot had requested a second examination of Ellen Carter's cabin, and now he stood within its confines, his magnifying glass poised over the narrow bed where the maid's body still lay, covered respectfully with a sheet. Captain Morton stood by the door, his arms crossed, while Dr. Caldwell hovered nearby, his medical curiosity piqued. Hastings watched as Poirot's gaze settled on the porthole, its brass frame gleaming faintly in the dim light. "Mon ami," Poirot said, turning to Hastings. "Observe the porthole. It is small, oui, but not so small that a slender person could not pass through. And yet, it is bolted from the inside, like the door. Tell me, what does this suggest?" Hastings frowned, his mind grappling with the implications. That the killer didn't leave through the porthole or the door. But how, then? "There's no other way out." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of satisfaction. "Precisement. Hastings, the locked room is not a mystery of escape but of illusion. The killer wishes us to believe the impossible. But Hercule Poirot does not believe in impossibilities, only in facts that have not yet been arranged." He moved to the bedside table, where a single glass of water sat, its surface undisturbed. Poirot tilted it gently, noting the faint residue. At the bottom, "Dr. Caldwell, you examined the body. Was there any sign of poison? Perhaps a sedative? That might explain the lack of struggle?" Caldwell shook his head, though his brow furrowed. "No signs of poisoning, Monsieur Poirot. The cause of death was clearly strangulation. The marks on her throat were unmistakable. But you're right. It's odd she didn't fight back. A sedative is possible, but I'd need a proper autopsy to confirm." Poirot nodded, his attention shifting to the floor. He knelt, his fingers brushing the polished wood near the bed. "Voila," he murmured, holding up a tiny, glinting object, a pearl earring, its luster dulled by a speck of dust. "This was not here when we first examined the room." Nest's pause. Captain Morton shook his head. "No, sir. The crew swept the cabin after we found her, but they reported nothing like this." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then it has been dropped since or placed here deliberately. Tell me, Hastings, who among our guests wears pearl earrings?" Hastings thought back to the dinner, picturing the women. Mrs. Prescott, certainly. She had pearls everywhere, necklace, earrings, even in her hair. Clara might have worn them too, though I don't recall. Beatrice, perhaps, but her jewelry was simpler. "Bon," Poirot said, slipping the earring into a small envelope. "This earring is a clue, but whether it points to guilt or distraction, we shall see." Returning to the saloon, Poirot gathered the guests once more, holding up the envelope. With a flourish, "Mesdames, an item has been found, a pearl earring, near the scene of the crime. Does anyone recognize it?" Mrs. Prescott's hand flew to her ear, her face paling. I had a pair like that, but I noticed one missing this morning. I assumed it was lost in my cabin." "And when did you last wear them, madam?" Poirot's voice was gentle, but his eyes were unrelenting. "Last night, at dinner," she replied, her voice faltering. "But I swear, I never went near that girl's cabin." Clara Winthrop spoke up, her tone calm. "Pearl earrings are hardly unique, Monsieur Poirot. I have a pair myself, though I wore diamonds last night. Perhaps Beatrice." Langley flushed, shaking her head. "I don't own pearls, monsieur. Mine are simple gold studs." Poirot's gaze lingered on each woman, then shifted to Tommy Haverford, who sat slouched, avoiding eye contact. "Monsieur Haverford, your cigarette case was found near the cabin. Now an earring appears. You were wandering the deck, you said. Did you, perhaps, see anyone near the lower deck before the scream?" Tommy's jaw tightened. I told you. I was alone. I didn't see anyone, and I didn't drop anything. Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, but Hastings knew better. The detective was building a mental map, each clue a coordinate in a landscape of deception. As the guests dispersed, Poirot drew Hastings aside, his voice low. The earring, the cigarette case, these are breadcrumbs, Hastings, meant to lead us astray. But there's another clue, one I have not yet shared. The glass of water in the cabinet held a residue, a faint bitterness. I suspect a sedative, administered before the scarf was tightened. Hastings's eyes widened. So the killer drugged her first, then strangled her in a locked room. But how did they get in and out? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. That, mon ami, is the question. The answer lies not in the room, but in the minds of those aboard. Someone has been careless or perhaps too clever. We must watch and listen for the smallest contradiction. As they stepped onto the deck, the mist parting to reveal the distant shore, Hastings felt the weight of Poirot's words. The Sapphire Queen was a labyrinth of secrets, and somewhere within its polished corridors, a single detail, a gesture, a word, a moment would unlock the truth. Chapter 7. More lies surfaceth. Mist over Lake Windermere had begun to lift by noon, revealing the distant hills in sharp relief. But aboard the Sapphire Queen, the fog of deception only thickened. The guests, now weary from confinement and the relentless scrutiny of Hercule Poirot, gathered in the saloon for a light luncheon. Though appetites were scant, the clink of silverware was subdued, and conversation faltered under the weight of unspoken accusations. Captain Hastings, seated near Poirot, observed the group with growing unease, noting the strange silences and furtive glances that betrayed secrets yet to be uncovered. Poirot, as ever, was a study in composure, his napkin tucked neatly into his waistcoat as he sipped his tisane. His green eyes darted from face to face, missing nothing, the way Mrs. Lavinia Prescott gripped her fork, the nervous tick in Gerald Trent's jaw, the way Tommy Haverford avoided looking at Clara Winthrop, whose serene demeanor seemed almost defiant in its calm. Hastings knew that Poirot was waiting, like a fisherman with a net, for the moment when the currents of human nature would deliver the truth. The detective set down his cup with a deliberate clink, drawing all eyes to him. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "We have established that Mademoiselle Carter was drugged, then strangled, in a locked cabin. We have a scarf, a cigarette case, and now a pearl earring, clues that point to many, yet to no one. But there is more to this tragedy than objects. There are motives hidden, perhaps, in the shadows of your lives. I invite you to share what you know, lest I uncover it myself." A heavy silence followed, broken only by the creak of the yacht's timbers. Then, to everyone's surprise, Beatrice Langley spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. I must say something, Monsieur Poirot. I didn't want to, but I can't keep silent any longer." All eyes turned to the young woman, her delicate features pale against her dark curls. Clara's gaze sharpened, and Tommy Haverford's head snapped up, his expression darkening. Beatrice twisted her handkerchief, her eyes fixed on the table. Ellen, she wasn't just a maid. She knew things. About Clara, about her past. I overheard them arguing 2 days ago, in Clara's cabin. Ellen was threatening to tell Sir Reginald something that could ruin everything. Clara's composure faltered for the briefest moment, her lips parting as if to protest. But she quickly regained her poise. "Beatrice, darling, you must be mistaken. Ellen and I never argued. She was loyal to me, Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming with interest. Mademoiselle Langley, this is most significant. What? Precisement. Did you hear? Beatrice hesitated, glancing at Clara, then at Sir Reginald, who looked thunderstruck. It was late at night. I couldn't sleep, so I went to Clara's cabin to borrow a book. I heard Ellen say, "If you don't tell him, I will. He deserves to know about Paris." Clara told her to be quiet, that it was none of her business. Ellen sounded angry, almost desperate. Paris? Poirot's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a guillotine. Mademoiselle Winthrop, what is this matter of Paris that your maid felt compelled to reveal? Clara's smile was tight, her hands folded in her lap. Monsieur Poirot, I assure you, this is a misunderstanding. I lived in Paris briefly, years ago, studying art. Ellen may have overheard some gossip, but there was nothing scandalous. Beatrice, you've let your imagination run wild. Beatrice flushed, but her jaw set stubbornly. I know what I heard. Clara, and Ellen wasn't the only one who knew things. I saw Tommy talking to her yesterday, on the deck, and he looked furious. Tommy slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses rattle. That's a lie. I barely spoke to the woman. She asked me for a light. That's all. Beatrice, why are you dragging me into this? Poirot raised a hand, silencing the outburst. Monsieur Haverford, your temper does you no favors. Mademoiselle Langley, you are certain of this conversation between Monsieur Haverford and the victim? Beatrice nodded, though her eyes were wet with tears. Yes, it was just after lunch. Tommy was holding her arm, and she looked frightened. The saloon erupted in murmurs. Mrs. Prescott's voice rose above the rest, sharp with indignation. This is outrageous. Sir Reginald, your nephew consorting with a maid, and now implicated in her death. I demand an explanation. Sir Reginald, his face red with anger, turned to Tommy. Is this true? Boy, what were you doing with that woman? Tommy's defiance crumbled, his shoulders slumping. It wasn't like that. I was warning her to stay out of our business. She was nosing around, asking questions about Clara, about the engagement. I told her to keep her mouth shut. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice deceptively gentle. And why, Monsieur Haverford? Did you feel the need to warn her? What business was she interfering in? Tommy hesitated, his gaze flickering to Clara, then away. It's not important. Just family matters. She had no right to meddle. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. Family matters. You say. Yet Mademoiselle Carter is dead, and you, monsieur, are found with a cigarette case near her cabin and a conversation that alarmed her. This is more than meddling. Before Tommy could respond, Gerald Trent spoke up, his voice unsteady. Monsieur Poirot, if I may, I, too, heard something odd. Yesterday afternoon, I saw Ellen speaking with Dr. Caldwell near the galley. She seemed upset, and he was trying to calm her. I didn't catch the words, but it struck me as unusual. Dr. Caldwell's face tightened, his hands clenching. That's absurd, Trent. I spoke to her briefly. She was feeling unwell, and I offered her some advice, as any doctor would. Nothing more. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Yet another conversation with the unfortunate Mademoiselle Carter. She was, it seems, a woman of many secrets and many enemies. Merci, Ms. Amis, for your candor. It brings us closer to the truth. As the guests dispersed, Hastings leaned toward Poirot, whispering, "This is getting murkier by the minute. Ellen was mixed up with half the ship. it seems. Clara's past, Tommy's temper. Caldwell's involvement, where does it lead? Poirot's eyes gleamed. To the heart of the matter. Mon ami. The lies are piling up, but they are like cards, stack them to high, and they fall. We must watch for the one who falters first. As the yacht rocked gently on the lake, Hastings felt the net tightening, the secrets of the Sapphire Queen rising to the surface like bubbles from the deep. Chapter 8. The emotional turning point. The afternoon sun hung low over Lake Windermere, its light filtering through the thinning mist to cast a pale glow on the Sapphire Queen. The yacht, once a symbol of opulence, now felt like a gilded cage, its polished decks heavy with the weight of suspicion. The guests, confined to the saloon and upper deck, moved with the strained civility of those who knew they were being watched, not only by Hercule Poirot but by each other. Captain Hastings, standing by the railing, felt the tension like a taut wire, ready to snap. The revelations of the morning had stirred the waters, and now something was about to break. Poirot, as ever, was the calm at the center of the storm, his meticulous appearance a stark contrast to the disarray of emotions round him. He had spent the hours since luncheon in quiet observation, his notebook filled with precise, cryptic notations. Hastings had caught glimpses of his work, a sketch of the yacht's lower deck, a timeline of the guests' alibis, a list of objects: scarf, cigarette case, earring, glass. Now, as the guests gathered in the saloon for tea, Poirot's demeanor suggested he was ready to push the investigation forward, to probe the cracks in the facades before him. The tea service was laid out with mechanical precision by the crew, but the atmosphere was anything but refined. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's sharp voice cut through the clink of porcelain. "This confinement is insufferable, Monsieur Poirot. How much longer must we endure this inquisition?" Poirot, sipping his tisane, regarded her with a serene smile. "Madam, the truth is like a fine tea, it requires time to steep. But, I assure you, we are close to a revelation. The secrets of Mademoiselle Carter's death are unraveling, and one of you holds the thread that will undo the knot." His words hung in the air, and Hastings noticed the guests' reactions. Clara Winthrop's hand tightened around her cup. Gerald Trent's spectacles slipped down his nose, and Tommy Haverford's scowl deepened. Beatrice Langley, however, was the one who broke. Her delicate frame trembled, and she set her cup down with a clatter, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I can't bear it any more," Beatrice cried, her voice raw with anguish. "Monsieur Poirot, you're right, someone knows more, and it's tearing me apart. I didn't tell you everything about Ellen and Clara." The saloon fell silent, every eye on Beatrice. Clara's composure wavered, her green eyes narrowing as she leaned forward. "Beatrice, darling, be careful what you say. You're upset, and grief can cloud the mind." But Beatrice shook her head, her voice gaining strength. "No, Clara, I won't be silenced. I heard more than I told you, Monsieur Poirot. That night in Clara's cabin, Ellen wasn't just threatening to tell Sir Reginald about Paris. She said she had proof, a letter, hidden somewhere on the yacht. She said it would ruin Clara's engagement, maybe even more." Sir Reginald's face reddened, his fists clenching on the table. "A letter? Clara, what is this nonsense? What could this maid have known that you haven't told me?" Clara's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, her poise seemed to crack, her hands twisting in her lap. "Reginald, I swear, I don't know what she's talking about." Ellen was prone to exaggeration. "Perhaps she misunderstood something from my time in Paris." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice soft but relentless. "Mademoiselle Winthrop, a letter is a tangible thing. not a misunderstanding. If such a document exists, it would be most illuminating. Did you know of this letter, or where Mademoiselle Carter might have hidden it? Clara shook her head, but her eyes darted to Beatrice, a flash of something fear, perhaps, crossing her face. I knew nothing of any letter. Beatrice, why didn't you tell me this before? Beatrice's tears flowed freely now. Her voice choked. Because I was afraid. Ellen was dead the next day. And I thought maybe you. She trailed off, her hand covering her mouth as if to retract the accusation. The room erupted in gasps. Mrs. Prescott's voice rose, shrill with outrage. Are you suggesting Clara killed her own maid? This is preposterous. Poirot raised a hand, his authority silencing the room. Mademoiselle Langley, your courage is commendable. But let us be precise. You believe this letter holds the key to Mademoiselle Carter's death. Did you see it, or know where it might be? Beatrice shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. No, I only heard her mention it. She said it was safe, where no one would look. I didn't know what to do, so I kept quiet. Until now. Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Tommy Haverford, who had gone rigid, his knuckles white around his teacup. Monsieur Haverford, you spoke with Mademoiselle Carter, warning her to stay out of family matters. Did these matters involve this letter, perhaps? Tommy's eyes flashed with anger. I told you, it was nothing. She was poking her nose where it didn't belong. That's all. I didn't know about any letter. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Yet you were angry, monsieur. And anger, like fear, can drive one to desperate acts. Before Tommy could retort, Dr. Caldwell interjected, his voice strained. Monsieur Poirot, this is all speculation. If there's a letter, we should search for it. It might clear things up. An excellent suggestion, Dr. Poirot said, rising. Captain Morton, will you assist us in a search of the yacht, the cabins, the saloon, the galley? Every corner must be examined. As the guests murmured their unease, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. Mon ami, this letter is the pivot on which the case turns. If it exists, it holds the secret that cost Mademoiselle Carter her life. But beware, someone here will do anything to keep it hidden. The search began, with Morton's crew combing the yacht under Poirot's precise instructions. Hastings joined them, checking Clara's cabin, where he found nothing but neatly folded clothes and a faint trace of jasmine perfume. In Ellen's cabin, the glass of water remained on the bedside table, its residue a silent accusation. But no letter was found, not in the drawers, not under the mattress, not in the crevices of the yacht's polished woodwork. As the search concluded, Poirot gathered the guests once more, his expression unreadable. The letter eludes us for now, but Mademoiselle Langley's confession has opened a door. The truth is close, Ms. Amos, and it will not remain hidden much longer. Hastings watched the guests disperse, Beatrice's sobs echoing in the silence. The emotional dam had broken, and with it, the secrets of the Sapphire Queen were rising ever closer to the surface, threatening to drown the guilty in their own lies. Chapter 9. The trapped. Late afternoon light filtered through the saloon windows of the Sapphire Queen, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and coil like the secrets harbored by its passengers. The air was thick with tension, the earlier revelations, Beatrice's confession about the letter, the accusations flying between Clara and Tommy having left the guests on edge. Hercule Poirot, ever the orchestrator of order, had decided it was time to tighten the net. He stood at the center of the saloon, his small frame radiating authority. his mustache as impeccably groomed as his thoughts were meticulously arranged. Captain Hastings, standing near the door, felt the atmosphere shift, as if the yacht itself were bracing for a storm. Poirot had requested that all guests and key crew members gather in the saloon, and now they sat in a semicircle of cushioned chairs, their faces a gallery of unease. Sir Reginald Haverford, his joviality long extinguished, gripped the armrests of his seat. Clara Winthrop, her emerald eyes guarded, sat with her hands folded, a picture of composure that Hastings suspected was a carefully crafted mask. Tommy Haverford slouched, his sullen demeanor tinged with defiance, while Mrs. Lavinia Prescott's lips were pursed in perpetual disapproval. Gerald Trent polished his spectacles nervously, and Dr. Ernest Caldwell maintained a professional calm, though his fingers twitched as if itching to act. Beatrice Langley, still shaken from her earlier outburst, clutched a handkerchief, her eyes red-rimmed. Captain Morton stood by the door, his stern presence a reminder of the yacht's confinement. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, his voice clear and deliberate. Mesdames et messieurs, we stand at a crossroads in this affair. A young woman, Ellen Carter, lies dead, strangled in a locked cabin with a silk scarf. We have clues: a cigarette case, a pearl earring, a glass with traces of a sedative, and now, thanks to Mademoiselle Langley, the possibility of a letter that holds a dangerous secret. The time has come to lay a trap for the truth. A murmur rippled through the group, but Poirot's raised hand silenced it. I have observed you all, and I have listened. Each of you has a motive, a secret, a reason to wish Mademoiselle Carter silent. But only one of you has acted. Tonight, I will reveal what I know, and I invite the guilty to confess before I am forced to expose them. Mrs. Prescott's voice was sharp. This is theatrical nonsense, Monsieur Poirot. If you know who did it, say so, and be done with it. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Patience, madam. The mind of Hercule Poirot works like a watch. Each gear must turn in its proper time. Let us review the facts, and perhaps the guilty will feel the weight of their own conscience. He began pacing, his steps measured. The crime occurred shortly before 8 o'clock, when a scream was heard. The cabin was locked from the inside, the porthole bolted. Yet Mademoiselle Carter was drugged and strangled without a struggle. The scarf, pale blue and embroidered, belongs to someone of means, perhaps Mademoiselle Winthrop, perhaps Madame Prescott. The cigarette case, engraved with Th, points to Monsieur Haverford, found near the cabin. The pearl earring, discovered later, implicates Madame Prescott or another, and the letter, mentioned by Mademoiselle Langley, suggests a secret so potent it drove someone to murder. Clara Winthrop spoke, her voice steady but cold. Monsieur Poirot, you speak of motives, but you found no letter. Beatrice's story is hearsay, nothing more. Why focus on this phantom when the evidence points elsewhere? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mademoiselle, the absence of the letter is as telling as its presence. Someone has ensured it remains hidden nor destroyed. But let us consider the alibis. You were all in the saloon at 8, or so you claim. Yet Monsieur Trent admits to leaving briefly. Madame Prescott was alone in her cabin until just before dinner, and Mademoiselle Langley was near the lower deck at 7:45. Monsieur Haverford, you were wandering, with no one to confirm your whereabouts. Dr. Caldwell, you spoke with the victim earlier, and Captain Morton, you were overseeing the crew, yet you found the body so quickly. Curious, non? Tommy Haverford stood, his face flushed. You're twisting everything. I didn't kill her. I told her to stay out of my business. That's all. She was meddling, asking about Clara's past, stirring up trouble. And what trouble, monsieur? Poirot's voice was sharp now, cutting through Tommy's bluster. Was it the same trouble that led Mademoiselle Carter to threaten Mademoiselle Winthrop with exposure? Or perhaps it concerned your resentment of your uncle's engagement, your fear of losing your inheritance. Sir Reginald's voice boomed. Tommy, what is this? Have you been plotting against Clara? Tommy's defiance crumbled, his voice breaking. I didn't plot anything. I didn't trust her. Ellen said things, hinted that Clara wasn't what she seemed. I thought she was trying to protect you, uncle. But I didn't kill her. Poirot turned to Clara, his gaze unrelenting. And you, mademoiselle? What of Paris? What secret did Ellen Carter hold that was worth her life? Clara's composure held, but her eyes flickered with something anger, perhaps, or fear. I've told you, Monsieur Poirot. There's no secret. Ellen was mistaken. Or perhaps she was inventing tales to gain favor. I had no reason to harm her. Poirot nodded, but his expression suggested he was far from convinced. He turned to the group, his voice rising with theatrical flourish. Ms. The trap is set. I know the method of this crime, and I know the motive. The letter, if it exists, will be found, but the guilty party cannot hide forever. I give you this chance, speak now, or Hercule Poirot will speak for you. The silence was suffocating, each guest frozen in their seat. Then, to everyone's shock, Gerald Trent stood, his spectacles slipping down his nose as he stammered, I can't do this anymore. I didn't kill her, but I know something. Ellen came to me yesterday, asking about Sir Reginald's will. She said she'd heard rumors that Clara was not who she claimed to be. I told her to drop it, that it wasn't her place. But I didn't think it would come to this. Sir Reginald's face was thunderous. Trent, you knew of this and said nothing. What rumors? Trent hesitated, his eyes darting to Clara. She mentioned a scandal in Paris. Something about a man, a swindler. I didn't believe it, but Ellen was insistent. I thought she was just fishing for gossip. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice soft but deadly. And you, Monsieur Trent, did not think to warn your client, Sir Reginald, or perhaps you had your own reasons to keep silent. Trent collapsed back into his chair, his face ashen. I swear, I didn't hurt her. I wanted to protect Sir Reginald. The saloon was a powder keg, and Poirot had lit the fuse. Hastings watched, heart pounding, as the guests exchanged accusatory glances. The trap had been sprung, and, though no confession had yet emerged, the cracks in their stories were widening, threatening to reveal the truth lurking beneath the surface of the Sapphire Queen. Chapter 10. The revealed saloon of the Sapphire Queen was a crucible of tension, its polished mahogany and crystal chandeliers now mere backdrops to the drama unfolding within. The guests sat in a taut semicircle, their faces etched with dread and anticipation as Hercule Poirot stood before them, his small stature commanding the room like a general on a battlefield. The mist outside had cleared, revealing the serene expanse of Lake Windermere. But aboard the yacht, clarity was about to be forged through Poirot's unrelenting logic. Captain Hastings, seated near the door, felt his pulse quicken, sensing that the detective was poised to unravel the mystery of Ellen Carter's death. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, his green eyes scanning each guest with surgical precision. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice steady and resonant. We have reached the moment of truth. A young woman, Ellen Carter, was murdered in a locked cabin, drugged and strangled with a silk scarf. Clues have emerged: a cigarette case, a pearl earring, a glass with sedative residue, and whispers of a hidden letter. Each of you has contributed to the tapestry of this crime, through your words, your silences, and your secrets. But now, Hercule Poirot will weave these threads into a single, undeniable truth. The guests stirred, their unease palpable. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott clutched her pearls, her lips pursed. Clara Winthrop sat motionless, her emerald eyes fixed on Poirot, while Tommy Haverford's hands clenched into fists. Gerald Trent's spectacles trembled on his nose, and Dr. Ernest Caldwell maintained a strained composure. Beatrice Langley's tear-streaked face betrayed her fear, and Sir Reginald Haverford's ruddy complexion had paled, his gaze darting between Clara and his nephew. Captain Morton stood by the door, his stern demeanor masking his own tension. Poirot paced slowly, his voice deliberate. Let us begin with the crime itself. Ellen Carter was found in her cabin at approximately 8:10 p.m., strangled with a silk scarf, the door and porthole locked from the inside. There was no struggle, suggesting she was sedated. The glass of water on her bedside table contained traces of a bitter substance, a sedative, likely chloral hydrate, administered to render her helpless. The scarf, pale blue and embroidered, was not hers, nor was the pearl earring found later. The cigarette case, engraved with Th, pointed to Monsieur Haverford, yet its placement seemed too convenient. And the letter, mentioned by Mademoiselle Langley, hinted at a secret that drove someone to kill. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The locked cabin is the heart of this mystery. How does one enter, kill, and leave without disturbing the lock? The answer, Ms. Amos, is that the killer did not leave, at least not immediately. The lock was a deception, a trick to confuse. But let us proceed step by step. Poirot turned to Clara Winthrop, his gaze piercing. Mademoiselle Winthrop, you were Ellen's mistress. She knew of a secret from your time in Paris, a scandal, perhaps involving a man. As Monsieur Trent revealed, this secret threatened your engagement to Sir Reginald. You claimed ignorance, but your composure, so perfect, betrayed a mind accustomed to control. The scarf, scented with jasmine, matches your perfume. Did you lend it to Ellen, or did you place it around her throat? Clara's lips parted, but her voice remained steady. Monsieur Poirot, I had no reason to harm Ellen. Yes, I lived in Paris, but there was no scandal. She was mistaken, or lying, to gain some advantage. The scarf could be anyone's. Poirot nodded, turning to Tommy Haverford. Monsieur Haverford, your cigarette case was found near the cabin, and you admitted to warning Ellen to stay out of family matters. Your resentment of Mademoiselle Winthrop's engagement is clear. Your inheritance, perhaps, was at stake. Your temper is quick, your alibi weak. Did you silence Ellen to protect your future? Tommy's face flushed with anger. I didn't kill her. I told her to stop meddling. Yes, but that's all. I lost my cigarette case. Someone must have taken it to frame me. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he addressed Mrs. Prescott. Madam, your pearl earring was found in the cabin, though you claim it was lost. Your disapproval of this engagement was vocal. Your disdain for Ellen's impertinence clear. Did you act to protect your social circle from scandal? Mrs. Prescott gasped, her hand flying to her chest. How dare you? I lost that earring, and I was in my cabin until dinner. I had no quarrel with that girl. Poirot continued, undeterred, his gaze shifting to Gerald Trent. Monsieur Trent, you knew of Ellen's inquiries about Sir Reginald's will and rumors of Clara's past. As his solicitor, your loyalty is to him, yet you kept silent. Did you fear what Ellen might reveal, or did you act to ensure it never surfaced? Trent stammered, his spectacles slipping. I told you. I only spoke to her briefly. I didn't want to worry Sir Reginald without proof. I'm no murderer. Finally, Poirot turned to Dr. Caldwell. Doctor, you spoke with Ellen, calming her when she was upset. Your medical knowledge would allow you to administer a sedative unnoticed. Did you have a reason to silence her, perhaps a debt, a secret of your own? Caldwell's jaw tightened. I helped her as a physician, nothing more. I had no motive to kill her. Poirot stopped pacing, his voice rising with theatrical intensity. And yet, one of you did. The truth lies in the details. The sedative was in the water glass, placed there before dinner. The scarf was tied with a professional knot, suggesting skill or practice. The locked door was bolted after the crime, but not by Ellen. The key, missing from the cabin, was found this morning by me in the galley, hidden in a tin of flour. Someone removed it to create the illusion of a locked room. A gasp rippled through the room. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. The killer is among you, and it is Dr. Ernest Caldwell. Caldwell's face drained of color, but he stood, his voice steady. This is absurd. I had no reason to kill her. Poirot's smile was cold. Au contraire, Doctor, your motive was desperation. Ellen Carter knew of your gambling debts, a secret you could not afford to have exposed, especially to Sir Reginald, who might have dismissed you as his physician. You spoke with her near the galley, where you slipped chloral hydrate into her water, which she took to her cabin. You followed, using a duplicate key to enter after she was unconscious. You strangled her with Mademoiselle Winthrop's scarf stolen from her cabin to cast suspicion on her. You bolted the door from the inside, then climbed through the porthole, a feat possible for a man of your agility, and re-entered the yacht via the deck. The key you hid in the galley, but you overlooked the residue in the glass and the scent of jasmine on the scarf. Caldwell's composure cracked, his hands trembling. You have no proof. This is speculation. Poirot produced the key from his pocket, its brass glinting. This key, Doctor, and the testimony of the crewman who saw you near the galley at 7:50, moments before the scream. You thought to outwit Hercule Poirot, but the little gray cells do not fail. Caldwell collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands, as the guests stared in stunned silence. Sir Reginald's voice shook. Ernest. Why? Caldwell's voice was a whisper. She was going to tell you about my debts. I'd have lost everything. Poirot's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. The truth, Ms. Amos, is a relentless tide. It cannot be stopped. As Captain Morton moved to restrain Caldwell, the saloon was silent, the weight of the revelation sinking deep into the hearts aboard the Sapphire Queen. Chapter 11. The reflection the saloon of the Sapphire Queen was hushed, the air heavy with the aftershock of Dr. Ernest Caldwell's confession. The guests sat in stunned silence, their faces a mosaic of disbelief, relief, and lingering unease. The chandeliers above cast a soft glow, but their light seemed dimmed by the weight of the truth that had just been unveiled. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small frame radiating a quiet triumph, his mustache as impeccable as his logic. Captain Hastings, seated near the door, felt a mix of admiration and melancholy, the resolution of the case leaving a bittersweet taste. The murderer had been unmasked, but the cost of the truth was etched in the strained expressions around him. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, his voice measured and reflective. Mesdames et messieurs, the tragedy of Mademoiselle Ellen Carter is resolved. But the affair leaves us with much to ponder. A life has been taken, a secret exposed, and the fragility of human nature laid bare. Hercule Poirot does not rejoice in such outcomes, for the truth, while necessary, is often a bitter draught. Sir Reginald Haverford, his ruddy face pale, spoke first, his voice thick with emotion. "Ernest, I trusted you. You were my friend, my physician. How could you betray me like this?" Dr. Caldwell, now restrained by Captain Morton's firm grip, hung his head, his earlier defiance replaced by a hollow resignation. "I was desperate, Reginald. The debts, they were crushing me. Ellen knew, and she wouldn't stop. She thought she was protecting you, but I couldn't let her ruin me." Clara Winthrop, her composure restored but her eyes shadowed, spoke softly. "And what of this letter, Monsieur Poirot? Was it real, or just a figment of Ellen's imagination?" Poirot's gaze softened as he regarded her. "Mademoiselle, the letter was real. Though it has not been found, I believe Dr. Caldwell destroyed it after the crime, fearing its contents would confirm Ellen's accusations. But its existence was enough to drive him to murder. Your past in Paris, whatever it may be, remains your own for now." Clara's lips tightened, but she said nothing, her silence a shield against further scrutiny. Hastings noted the flicker of relief in her eyes, though he wondered what secrets she still guarded. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, her indignation tempered by shock, adjusted her pearls. "This is all so dreadful. To think we dined with a murderer. Monsieur Poirot, how did you see through it all?" Poirot's smile was modest, but his eyes gleamed with pride. "Madam, the little grey cells, they observe what others overlook. The sedative in the glass, the scent of jasmine on the scarf, the key hidden in the galley, these were not accidents but signposts to the truth. Dr. Caldwell's medical knowledge, his access to the galley, his desperation, they formed a pattern only the mind of Hercule Poirot could discern." Tommy Haverford, his sullen demeanor softened by the resolution, muttered, "I thought it was Clara. I was wrong about her, wasn't I?" Poirot turned to him, his tone gentle but firm. "Monsieur, suspicion is a dangerous thing when it lacks evidence. Your cigarette case was a red herring, placed to mislead. But your anger, your fear for your uncle, these were real. Learn from this, and let trust guide you, not resentment." Beatrice Langley, her tears dried but her voice trembling, spoke up. "I'm sorry I didn't say more sooner, Monsieur Poirot. I was so afraid. But you've given Ellen justice." Poirot inclined his head. "Mademoiselle, your courage in speaking of the letter was the spark that lit the truth. You have nothing to reproach yourself for." As the guests absorbed his words, Captain Morton stepped forward. "The police launch is approaching, Monsieur Poirot. They'll take Dr. Caldwell into custody. We'll be docking soon." Poirot nodded, his expression serene. "Bon, the law will take its course, and the Sapphire Queen will return to its peaceful purpose. But let us not forget the lesson of this tragedy. Secrets, when buried too deep, can rise to destroy." As the guests began to disperse, their movements slow and subdued, Hastings approached Poirot, his voice low. "You did it again, old chap. Pulled the threads together like a master weaver. But how did you know it was Caldwell, right from the start?" Poirot chuckled softly, adjusting his cufflinks. "Mon ami, I did not know, not at first. But the mind of Hercule Poirot is like a mirror, reflecting the inconsistencies of human behavior. The scarf, the sedative, the key, these pointed to someone with skill and access. Caldwell's calm, his medical expertise, his nervous glances when Ellen's conversations were mentioned, these were the cracks in his facade. The rest was simply a matter of order and method. Hastings shook his head, marveling. And the locked room. That porthole trick was brilliant. Poirot's eyes twinkled. The porthole was small, but not impossible for a man of Caldwell's build. He underestimated the scrutiny of Hercule Poirot, who notices even the smallest detail. As the police launch drew alongside the yacht, its engines a low rumble, Poirot turned to gaze at the lake, its surface now calm under the fading sun. Hastings, the human heart is a deep and troubled water. We must navigate it with care, lest we drown in its currents. With that, Poirot stepped toward the deck, his cane tapping lightly, ready to brief the arriving authorities. Hastings followed, feeling the weight of the case lift, but knowing that the echoes of its secrets would linger long after the Sapphire Queen returned to shore. Chapter 12. The aftermath. Sapphire Queen glided slowly toward the shore of Lake Windermere, its engines humming with a subdued rhythm that seemed to echo the somber mood aboard. The police launch had come and gone, taking Dr. Ernest Caldwell into custody, his wrists bound and his head bowed as he was led away under the watchful eyes of the local constabulary. The guests, now free to move about the yacht, lingered in the saloon, their conversations hushed, their faces marked by the strain of the past days. The revelation of Caldwell's guilt had lifted the veil of fear, but it left behind a residue of unease, as if the yacht itself carried the stain of the crime. Hercule Poirot stood on the upper deck, his small figure silhouetted against the fading light of the late afternoon. His patent leather shoes gleamed, and his mustache remained a paragon of precision. But his expression was contemplative, his green eyes fixed on the distant hills. Captain Hastings joined him, the cool lake breeze ruffling his hair as he leaned against the railing. "Well, Poirot," Hastings said, his voice tinged with relief, "you've done it again. The case is solved, the murderer caught. I must say, I thought it might be Clara for a moment." With all that talk of Paris, Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile, but his gaze remained on the horizon. Mon ami, the temptation to suspect Mademoiselle Winthrop was strong, was it not? The scarf, the perfume, the whispers of a scandal, they pointed to her like a well-placed arrow. But the mind of Hercule Poirot does not follow arrows, it follows truth. And the truth lay in the details. The sedative, the key, the porthole. Hastings nodded, still marveling at the intricacy of the solution. Caldwell was clever. I'll give him that. Using the porthole to escape. Hiding the key in the galliot was almost the perfect crime. Almost, Poirot said, his voice soft but firm. There is no perfect crime, Hastings. The human mind, no matter how cunning, leaves traces small, yes, but visible to one who looks with care. Dr. Caldwell underestimated the power of observation, and that was his undoing. Below, in the saloon, the guests were grappling with the aftermath. Sir Reginald Haverford sat alone at the table, a glass of brandy untouched before him. His broad shoulders slumped. The betrayal of his trusted physician had shaken him deeply, and the revelations about Clara's past, though unconfirmed, lingered like a shadow. Clara Winthrop, seated nearby, maintained her air of composure, but her hands betrayed a slight tremble as she sipped her tea. Tommy Haverford, no longer sullen but subdued, avoided her gaze. His earlier accusations now a source of quiet shame. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, ever the arbiter of propriety, was speaking in low tones to Gerald Trent, who nodded absently, his spectacles fogged with worry. Beatrice Langley, her earlier tears replaced by a fragile calm, sat by a window, staring at the lake as if searching for answers in its depths. The crew, under Captain Morton's direction, prepared the yacht for docking, their movements brisk, but subdued, as if the weight of the crime had settled over them as well. Hastings turned to Poirot. His curiosity piqued. "What about the letter, Poirot? You said Caldwell likely destroyed it. But do you think it held something real about Clara's past?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, but his expression remained enigmatic. The letter, mon ami, was the spark that ignited this tragedy, whether it contained truth or merely Ellen Carter's suspicions. We may never know, but its threat was enough to push Dr. Caldwell to desperation. As for Mademoiselle Winthrop, he paused, glancing toward the saloon. She is a woman of secrets, but not, I think, a murderer. Her past is her own to guard, unless it becomes necessary to uncover. Hastings frowned, sensing Poirot's restraint. You're letting her off lightly, aren't you? That business about Parasite could still cause trouble for Sir Reginald. Poirot shrugged, a gesture both elegant and dismissive. Trouble, Hastings, is the province of the heart, not the law. Sir Reginald must decide whether to trust his fiancée. Hercule. Poirot solves crimes, not marriages. As the yacht neared the dock, the guests began to gather their belongings, their movements slow, as if reluctant to leave the scene of such a profound unraveling. Poirot and Hastings descended to the saloon, where Sir Reginald rose to meet them, his voice heavy with gratitude. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, extending a hand, "I owe you a debt I can never repay. You've saved us from a nightmare, though it's cost me a friend." Poirot shook his hand, his grip firm but gentle. "Sir Reginald, the loss of a friend is a wound, but the truth heals. In time, you have my sympathies and my assurance that justice has been served." Clara approached, her expression unreadable but her voice soft. "Monsieur Poirot, I thank you for finding the truth and for your discretion." Poirot inclined his head, his eyes searching hers. "Mademoiselle, discretion is the companion of truth, but it is not its servant. Keep your secrets close, but know that they are never truly hidden." As the guests prepared to disembark, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. "Mon ami, the Sapphire Queen has taught us a lesson. The human soul is a deep lake, and its secrets, when stirred, create ripples that cannot be ignored. Let us leave this place and seek the calm of simpler waters." With that, Poirot stepped onto the gangway, his cane tapping lightly, his figure a beacon of order in a world of chaos. Hastings followed, the weight of the case lifting with each step, but the memory of its shadows lingering, a testament to the relentless tide of truth that Poirot had summoned from the depths. Chapter 13. The unsettled Coren's Sapphire Queen had docked at the quiet pier of Lake Windermere, its gleaming hull now tethered to the shore as if reluctant to release its passengers from the dram that had unfolded within. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the lake, but the warmth did little to dispel the chill that lingered among the guests. The arrest of Dr. Ernest Caldwell had brought resolution to Ellen Carter's murder, yet the air was thick with unresolved tensions, unspoken questions, and the faint ripple of secrets still submerged. Captain Hastings, standing on the deck, felt the weight of the case settling into a quieter but no less poignant unease, as if the yacht's polished surfaces held echoes of the truths Poirot had uncovered. Hercule Poirot, as impeccable as ever, in his tailored suit, stood near the gangway, his green eyes scanning the guests as they prepared to disembark. His mustache was a perfect arc of symmetry, a testament to his unshakable order. But his expression carried a trace of melancholy, as if the resolution of the case, while satisfying, had left him contemplating the frailties of those he had judged. Hastings joined him, his hands in his pockets, his gaze drifting to the distant hills. "Well, Poirot," Hastings said, his voice tinged with a mix of relief and curiosity, "the case is closed, and we're back on solid ground. But I can't help feeling there's more to this than we've seen. Clara's past. That letter, it's all still a bit murky, isn't it?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile, his eyes gleaming with that familiar spark of insight. "Moan. Ami, you are perceptive. The murder of Mademoiselle Carter is solved. But the human heart is a lake with many depths. Not all secrets rise to the surface, even under the scrutiny of Hercule Poirot. Mademoiselle Winthrop's past. The letter, these are shadows that may yet cast their influence." Below, the guests moved with a subdued air, their luggage gathered by the crew as they prepared to leave the yacht. Sir Reginald Haverford stood apart, his broad frame hunched as he stared at the water, his engagement to Clara Winthrop now clouded by doubt. Clara herself was a study in composure, her emerald gown replaced by a simple traveling dress, her auburn hair neatly pinned. Yet Hastings noted the way her hands clasped her reticule, the knuckles white with tension. Tommy Haverford, no longer sullen but subdued, lingered near his uncle, his earlier accusations against Clara now a source of quiet regret. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, her pearls glinting in the sunlight, was speaking sharply to a crewman about the handling of her trunks, her indignation a mask for her discomfort. Gerald Trent, the solicitor, adjusted his spectacles nervously, his face pale as he glanced at Clara, as if still wrestling with the rumors Ellen had shared. Beatrice Langley, her delicate features softened by relief, stood by the railing, her eyes fixed on the shore as if eager to escape the yacht's oppressive memories. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low and reflective. "Observe, Hastings, the currents that remain. Sir Reginald is a man torn between love and doubt. Mademoiselle Winthrop guards her secrets with the skill of a chess master. Monsieur Haverford grapples with his own mistrust, and Monsieur Trent carries the burden of what he did not say. The murder is solved, but the ripples of this affair will linger." Hastings frowned, his mind returning to the letter Beatrice had mentioned. "Do you think we'll ever know what was in that letter, Poirot? Or if it even existed? Caldwell destroyed it, you said, but it feels like there's more to Clara's story." Poirot's gaze drifted to Clara, who was now speaking quietly with Sir Reginald, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "The letter, mon ami, was the catalyst, not the crime. Its contents, whether truth or fabrication, drove Dr. Caldwell to desperation. But Mademoiselle Winthrop, she is a woman who knows the value of silence. I suspect her past holds no crime, only choices she wishes to keep buried. To pursue them further would be to chase shadows, not justice." As the guests began to disembark, Beatrice approached Poirot, her voice soft but earnest. "Monsieur Poirot, I can't thank you enough. You gave Ellen justice, and you spared me from carrying that secret alone. I hope I did the right thing." Poirot inclined his head, his expression kind. "Mademoiselle Langley, your courage was the key that unlocked this mystery. You acted with honor, and for that, you have my respect." Beatrice managed a small smile before joining the others on the gangway. Sir Reginald, still visibly shaken, approached next, his voice gruff. "Poirot, I'll not forget what you've done. This business with Caldwell, it's a blow, but you've saved us from worse. If you ever need anything, you have my gratitude." Poirot bowed slightly, his demeanor impeccable. "Sir Reginald, it is my duty to seek the truth, and I am glad to have served it. But take care, trust is a fragile thing, and you must rebuild it with those you hold dear." As Sir Reginald rejoined Clara, Hastings caught a fleeting look between them, her eyes searching. His uncertain. The engagement, he sensed, hung by a thread, its future dependent on truths yet unspoken. Captain Morton, overseeing the crew's final preparations, nodded to Poirot. "Monsieur, the yacht is secured, and the police have all they need. You've done a remarkable thing here." Poirot's smile was modest. "Merci, Capitaine. The Sapphire Queen is a fine vessel, but it is the human soul that requires the most careful navigation." As the last of the guests stepped onto the pier, Poirot turned to Hastings, his cane tapping lightly on the deck. "Come, mon ami. Let us leave this place and its secrets to the lake. The world awaits, and there are always more puzzles for Hercule Poirot to solve." Hastings followed, the weight of the case settling into memory, but the unresolved questions about Clara's past, the letter, and the fragile bonds aboard the yacht lingered like ripples on the water, fading but never truly gone. Chapter 14. The ripples of truth. Pier at Lake Windermere was bustling with subdued activity as the passengers of the Sapphire Queen disembarked, their footsteps heavy with the weight of the ordeal they had endured. The late afternoon sky was a tapestry of soft pinks and golds, the lake reflecting the colors in a serene mirror that belied the turmoil of the past days. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the pier, his tailored suit immaculate, his mustache a perfect curve of precision. His green eyes, however, held a quiet intensity, as if he were still sifting through the undercurrents of the case, searching for any lingering discord. Captain Hastings, beside him, felt a sense of closure mingled with unease, the resolution of Ellen Carter's murder leaving questions that lingered like mist over the water. The guests, now free from the confines of the yacht, moved with a mixture of relief and reticence. Sir Reginald Haverford, his broad frame slightly stooped, walked arm in arm with Clara Winthrop, their conversation low and strained. Clara's face was a mask of calm, but her eyes darted occasionally to Poirot, as if wary of his penetrating gaze. Tommy Haverford trailed behind, his earlier sullenness replaced by a quiet introspection, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Mrs. Lavinia Prescott, her pearls catching the fading light, issued sharp instructions to the porters handling her luggage, her voice a brittle attempt to reclaim authority. Gerald Trent, the solicitor, lingered near the edge of the group, his spectacles fogged with worry, while Beatrice Langley walked alone, her delicate features softened by a newfound resolve. Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "It's over, Poirot, but it doesn't feel finished. There's something about Clara, those hints about Paris, the letter. Are you sure we've seen the whole picture?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "Mon ami, the picture is never whole, for the human heart is a canvas of infinite complexity. Dr. Caldwell's guilt is certain, his motive, his method, his mistakes, all laid bare by the little gray cells. But Mademoiselle Winthrop, she is a puzzle within a puzzle. Her secrets, I suspect, are not criminal but personal, and they are hers to keep unless they threaten another." Hastings frowned, glancing at Clara as she spoke softly to Sir Reginald. "You think she's hiding something, don't you? Something that drove Ellen to threaten her?" Poirot nodded, his gaze following Hastings's. Hastings. The letter, though destroyed, was no fiction. It held a truth, or a perceived truth, that Ellen believed would alter Sir Reginald's affections. But without the letter, we have only whispers, and Hercule Poirot does not trade in whispers. We have done our duty. Justice for Mademoiselle Carter is served. as the guests prepared to depart in their respective motorcars. Beatrice approached Poirot, her hands clasped nervously. "Monsieur Poirot, I wanted to say something before we part. I feel responsible, in a way. If I'd spoken sooner about what I heard, perhaps Ellen might still be alive." Poirot's expression softened, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle Langley, you must not carry such a burden. Your courage in revealing the letter broke the silence that shielded the murderer. You acted with honor, and that is enough." Beatrice managed a tremulous smile, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, monsieur. I'll try to remember that." Sir Reginald, overhearing, approached with Clara at his side. His voice was gruff, but there was a warmth in it. "Poirot, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. You've saved us from a nightmare. I don't know how to thank you." Poirot bowed slightly, his demeanor impeccable. "Sir Reginald, the gratitude of an honest man is thanks enough. But take care, trust is a fragile vessel, and you must navigate it with wisdom." Clara's eyes met Poirot's, a flicker of something gratitude, perhaps, or caution passing through them. "Monsieur Poirot, your discretion has been appreciated. I hope we can put this behind us." Poirot's smile was polite but probing. "Mademoiselle, the past is never truly behind us, but it need not rule us. Choose your path wisely." As the couple moved toward their car, Hastings caught a glimpse of Tommy watching them, his expression unreadable. "What about young Tommy?" he asked Poirot. "He's been cleared, but he's still carrying a grudge, I wager." Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Monsieur Haverford is young, and youth is quick to anger but slow to forgive. He must learn that suspicion, without evidence, is a poison. But he is not our concern now." Mrs. Prescott, passing by with her entourage of luggage, paused to address Poirot. "Monsieur, I trust we'll hear no more of this sordid affair in the papers. My reputation cannot afford such scandal." Poirot's smile was faintly amused. "Madame, Hercule Poirot is the soul of discretion. The truth will be known to those who need it, and no further." As the guests dispersed, Captain Morton approached, his stern features softened by respect. "Monsieur Poirot, the crew, and I owe you our thanks. You've restored order to the Sapphire Queen. If you ever need a berth, you're welcome aboard." Poirot inclined his head. "Merci, Capitaine. But I prefer the solid ground, where the puzzles are less aquatic." As the last car pulled away, Poirot turned to Hastings, his cane tapping lightly on the pier. "Come, mon ami. The lake has given up its secrets, and London awaits. There are always more mysteries for Hercule Poirot to unravel." Hastings followed, the case settling into memory, but the ripples of its truths, Clara's guarded past, Tommy's unresolved resentment, the fragility of trust lingered, a reminder that even the calmest waters hide currents that can pull one under. Chapter 15. The departure. Etty's sun had dipped below the hills, casting a twilight glow over Lake Windermere as the last traces of the Sapphire Queen's passengers faded into the distance. The pier, now quiet save for the gentle lapping of water against wood, seemed to exhale, relieved of the weight of secrets and suspicion that had gripped the yacht. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge, his silhouette sharp against the fading light, his cane resting lightly in his hand. His green eyes, ever observant, lingered on the lake, as if bidding farewell to the mysteries it had held. Captain Hastings, beside him, felt a sense of finality, though the echoes of the case, the murder, the motives, the unspoken truth still stirred in his mind. Their motor car awaited, a sleek black vehicle arranged by Sir Reginald's staff to take them to the nearest train station for their return to London. Poirot adjusted his hat, his movements precise, and turned to Hastings with a faint smile. Mon ami, another puzzle solved, another truth brought to light. Yet you seem pensive. What troubles you? Hastings sighed, his gaze drifting to the now distant sapphire queen, its lights twinkling faintly as the crew prepared it for the night. It feels like there's more we didn't uncover, Poirot. Clara's past. That letter, there's a story there, isn't there? And Sir Reginald, Tommy, even Beatrice, they're all changed by this. I wonder what happens to them now. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. You are right, Hastings. The resolution of a crime does not erase its ripples. Mademoiselle Winthrop carries her secrets, and Sir Reginald must decide whether love or doubt will prevail. Monsieur Haverford must learn to temper his suspicions, and Mademoiselle Langley will carry the weight of her courage. But these are matters of the heart, not of justice. Hercule Poirot solves murders, not lives. Hastings chuckled, though his heart wasn't in it. You make it sound so simple, old chap, but I suppose that's your gift, seeing the order in the chaos. Poirot's mustache twitched, a spark of pride in his eyes. Precisement. The world is full of chaos, but the little gray cells, they impose order. The scarf, the sedative, the key, the porthole, these were the notes of a discordant symphony, and I, Hercule Poirot, conducted them to harmony. As they walked toward the car, Hastings glanced back at the lake, its surface now dark and still. Do you think Clara will tell Sir Reginald the truth about Paris, whatever it is? Or will she keep it buried? Poirot paused, his cane tapping lightly on the pier. Mademoiselle Winthrop is a woman of calculation, Hastings. She will reveal only what serves her purpose. But Sir Reginald is no fool. He will sense the truth, even if it remains unspoken. Their future depends on whether they can navigate the currents of trust. The driver opened the car door, and Poirot settled into the seat with his usual elegance, arranging his coat to avoid a single wrinkle. Hastings joined him, the leather creaking as he leaned back, his mind still turning over the case. And what about Caldwell? Do you think he'll confess fully to the police? Or will he try to spin some tale? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Dr. Caldwell is a man who gambled and lost not only at cards but with his soul. He will confess, for he has no cards left to play. The evidence, the key, the sedative. The crewman's testimony is overwhelming. The law will deal with him, and Hercule Poirot will rest easy knowing justice is served. As the car pulled away from the pier, the lights of the Sapphire Queen faded into the twilight, a fading memory of elegance tainted by tragedy. The road wound through the hills, the silence between Poirot and Hastings comfortable, the bond of their shared investigation, a quiet strength. Hastings thought of the guests, Sir Reginald grappling with betrayal, Clara guarding her past, Tommy wrestling with his regrets, Beatrice finding her strength, and even Mrs. Prescott, whose indignation masked her own vulnerabilities. The case had peeled back their facades, revealing the raw humanity beneath. Poirot, Hastings said, breaking the silence, do you ever tire of it? The secrets, the lies, the darkness you uncover. Poirot turned to him, his eyes softening. Mon ami, the darkness is part of the human condition, but so is the light. To uncover the truth is to shine a light into that darkness, to bring order where there is chaos. It is not a burden, but a calling. And as long as there are puzzles, Hercule Poirot will answer. The car hummed along, carrying them toward the station and the train that would take them back to London's familiar bustle. The lake, the yacht, the murder all receded into the past, but their lessons lingered. Hastings leaned back, a smile tugging at his lips. Well, I suppose London will have its own mysteries waiting for us. Poirot's chuckle was soft, his voice warm with anticipation. Indeed, Hastings, the world is never short of mysteries, and we shall meet them with order, method, and the little gray cells. As the car crested a hill, the last glimpse of Lake Windermere vanished behind them, its secrets sinking deep into its depths, leaving only the promise of new horizons and new truths to uncover.